Hey, let's bring back random thoughts. A lot of people will say like that's the stuff that they would want to see. I don't have the bandwidth, the time, the patience to sit there and type that out. And remember, those would take there would be an accumulation of months of time. So I got my cell phone here. I got an email that had a bunch of random questions, and it's a lot easier to answer them here. One person gets the answer, everybody gets the answer. Let's see. So there's some connection here, but they don't seem to be imminently all related. So number one, we got to talk about. He's suggesting that I've talked about the core and the diaphragm and how that can impact the neck. No question. Now, if we go to something that I think a lot of folks would agree on, which is purely this physiological representation of aligning breathing and the neck, is that when you get fatigued, you'll start to use what are known as secondary inspiratory muscles, which include the sternocleidomastoid and the scalenes, along with others such as the intercostals. So you are going to use these other muscles that are not required for the actual exchange of air through the nose or mouth into the lungs, etc. They're not required. Simply when you are significantly fatigued and or under recovered, which is a term that I use a lot more than fatigued, then we will be able to use those other muscles in a common compensatory strategy. So ideally, we don't need to use those. If you constantly breathe that way, whether you have acquired that motor skill or are simply always underwater in this under-recovered state, you'll start to use those muscles. If you start to use those muscles, it is absolutely very reasonable that you'll start to overload particular segments of the spine, which then can lead to different angles of appreciating disc, nerve root, neural tension, radiculopathy, etc., etc. So without a doubt, the breathing strategies are more costly from this line of interdependence, if you will, going back to that term that Weiner published in 2007, regional interdependence. Now, that's really based on this muscle strategy, musculoskeletal strategy. Without a doubt, we know that this efficient stereotypical breathing pattern of using the diaphragm to create intra-abdominal pressure absolutely has a neural impact. And that impact on the autonomic nervous system is typically one of a parasympathetic shift. So we see laying down and breathing can have a very, very profound impact on the relaxation of muscles that can include the neck. Because additionally, when we apply those breathing strategies with a neutral spine from the sacrum, pelvis, lumbar, thoracic, and cervical, whether the neck is a feed forward mechanism of here, or we're simply able to achieve that by ranges of motion that do not require any more tension than necessary, that neutral spine allows for the rib cage to be in this ideal position, for the diaphragm to contract and drop, and the cervical muscles can be relaxed. It doesn't only have to be on your back. It can be any unloaded position. It can move to any position that we typically see in the neurodevelopmental perspective. Additionally, when the rib cage, when or if it can achieve this ideal position, well, then the scapula can be in a different position, and one that is probably more ideal. And maybe in the analysis of, just because a joint system can get to a certain place doesn't mean it can always automatically stabilize. I think that's the first step. If you want to stabilize in a certain position, you have to be able to get there. That's the difference between mobility and stability. I bring that up though because when we look at serratus anterior and the lower trap, which is now another degree away from the original question, when the scapula is in an ideal position, then upper trap, levator, which we know connect to both the neck and the scapula, then they will likely be in a more efficient and relaxed situation. So yes, without a question, appreciating everything that we think we know and the value of breathing is going to have good impact for what we see in the neck. It can be a significant part of all neck pathologies or movement limitations or characteristics. All right, next. Even before that, the greatest story ever told. Green Lantern is my favorite superhero because he was the last man standing. I know you want to talk about the brightest day that of course came after the blackest night, and that is not Hal Jordan. That was Kyle. I try to think too fast. Kyle Rayner. This is hands down best storyline of any comic book ever, at least in DC. I'm not as well read in Marvel. I only know the Marvel movies. Next, standing upright. What kind of tone do you prefer in the core and abdominals? Well, let's just say this. I don't care. I don't think number one, I don't think walking and standing should ever have some kind of direct coaching or cueing that involves anything involving the core. It is too much of a learned motor strategy that trying to organize tip to tip, plus vestibular, plus everything that comes after that in terms of balance, vision, balance. You are trying to learn something within this quagmire of different variables. So I don't think doing something what bracing, drawing in is a poop lollipop, which I'm pretty sure other people have said in the past. That's why it comes to mind. Whatever it is, if you want to do anything, squeeze your bottom maybe when you take that step through, and maybe we can get a little posterior tilt so you can really, I'm not even sure that's an ideal thing, but if that's the only thing you can do to get your back to feel good when you're walking, well, that's actually a pretty good sign, because opening L5, S1 there may take some load off of that segment if that's even working for you. So no, I don't think there's anything we need to be doing when you're standing. Now, I do think standing facing forward, facing back to the wall, and using the wall as a coach to find some tactile input of what is a long, tall spine, I think there's some value there. But just standing naturally, like what I'm doing right now, if I have to think about doing something to be pain-free, I got more problems, and I probably shouldn't be standing for that long a period of time unless absolutely necessary. And let's find another position where I have less joints to control, so I can really start to zero in on what it is that I'm trying to accomplish. All right, Kyle Rayner. I'm so disappointed. You guys know when I do this, I talk really, really fast. So let's see what we have next. Someone told me that the neck should not be trained for strength. As someone with a pretty big neck, I'm pretty sure my neck is pretty strong. And over the time, now here's your little N of 1, but no, of course the neck needs to be trained for strength. Now, what I don't think is that your neck should be trained with typical approach using isotonic strategies. AKA, if I want my elbow stronger, I can curl, and I should get a potentially stronger elbow flexion pattern, not just your biceps. Now, that in itself is very, very effective in my mind for elbows, knees, hips, fingers, etc., shoulders. The spine works a little bit different. In as much as that if I am going to move outside of certain ranges, training with concentric and eccentrics, and expecting those muscles to get strong, just like my elbow muscles get strong, the muscles likely will adapt, but I do not think that motor strategy translates to when you want a strong neck, aka when you take a punch, you don't want to move with it, you want to hold your position. When you have this Olympic lifting pattern, you want your neck still. This is not exactly the same. I think training for isometrics is significantly of value. Now that comes with its whole list of challenges, because you need somebody to maybe use your hands. And now when we're talking about high school kids, is that the right way? And you can also sandbag it. There's no guarantee that anyone, young or experienced athletes or users, but absolutely the neck needs to be strong. Training the neck for hypertrophy, complete mess in my mind, where this whole idea of the canister theory. The canister is stiff and strong. Let's take a punching bag, and it's real stiff, a heavy bag. It's not heavy because of the outside muscles. It's heavy because all the stuff that's in the middle. And when you move in this isotonic fashion, you are not using the multifidus. You're not using the deep neck flexors. It's not an evil thing that your neck is going to fall apart if you train this way. I don't think we can translate that strength, because I think you want the neck to be a big, strong, heavy bag. This is all about neck being neutral. It's not that being outside of neutral. Look, my neck is still here. It's still okay. But I don't think that is a transferable adaptation that prepares you to take hits, that prepares you to have a strong neck. I would probably say put really, really heavy things in your hands, and the neck will probably be strong, because anytime you take your neck, and this is kind of at least supporting what I think is my point, if you put something real heavy in your hands and then you start to move around, you'll probably drop it. Decentrating the neck then decentrates its neighbors, and it's not because you weren't strong enough. It's not because your grip gave out because of it's too weak. It gave out because the whole chain was in this inefficient position, and you weren't able to create the ideal linkage from the neck through the scapula through the arm. So yes, the neck needs to be strong, but I don't think it's not that the muscles are different, that they won't respond. I don't think it's transferable for others. So you want a big giant neck, yeah, it can happen, but I don't think that's the neck you want as an athlete. Or I think from where this individual is coming from is somebody with some neck pathology from rolling around or whatever. And I don't think this. Look, certainly if your neck hurts, I don't care what you're doing, your neck should not hurt when you're trying to strength train. Canister theory, I think we talked about it in T equals R2. No, it's not it. Not it. You need to have a strong neck, and we need to do something about it. Now, the other thing, one more thing before I get to the next question here. If you're training when you're moving, but you're not using loads that would typically create strength adaptations, but you're simply training for connective tissue adaptations, in my mind, that's a completely different ballgame. Okay, and that's where there's devices that can go around your head, and I actually think I've used them myself. I don't use them regularly, but these are useful. You put on this little halo thing and you do whatever you're going to do. Now you're absolutely moving outside of neutral, but you're not using loads that would make you the muscle stronger from a contractile element. What you're doing is simply loading the connective tissue, and we know connective tissue will become more robust if you put it into tension. Now that, I think, is going to be transferable when you go back to things like isometrics and putting heavy things in your hands. So that's what I think about neck. It's kind of tired, but I don't know. It's weird to me that these things are. I think like my problem is, Charlie, you don't understand why other people don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Now, if what I have just said is completely wrong and violating laws of physics and biology, somebody can tell me, and I'll be very excited to listen. But I'm not interested in what you think you have. Let's just talk about the laws. Let's talk about the rules. If my rules are wrong, then tell me. Don't tell me what you think happens by your training, because you probably have a bunch of young athletes that are bulletproof enough. Or you're only telling me the good things that happen, and you're not telling me, because maybe you don't even remember them, the bad things that happen. I can. I think it was. I think it might have been a week before he fought Poirier, in round two, and I worked with Eddie Alvarez for a good part of a day up in New York. And trust me, getting his neck to a place that he was capable of fighting a UFC World Championship bout, trust me, we weren't worried about any of the things that I'm suggesting are not useful. Okay, so he had a hard time moving his neck. Not surprising, is one of the greatest UFC fighters of his time, and we were able to get him to a very, very good place where he look, this is a killer. He's gonna fight no matter what. I think he would have had a better chance fighting with a neck that didn't hurt him to look right and left. And we used a lot of the things so far that we've talked about in terms of training without this isotonic approach. A lot of times it's not unfair. If you think something hurts and then you don't have the ideal force production, well, how do you solve force production? You get it stronger. Improving force production is not always because the muscle can't generate the force. Sometimes there's other things in the way, and that's what we saw with Eddie a few years ago. This one's pretty rich. And it was the same person that gave him some of this nonsensical advice, like drawing in your belly button. The lats should never be stretched, and fixing the front automatically would fix the back. So yeah, I'm gonna, I apologize for my sarcasm here. Fixing upper cross tightness will benefit the whole. Yeah, so he's saying, yeah, of course, doing good things to remediate standards in the front side. I'm guessing that means pecs, abdominal, anterior rib cage, etc., all very, very good things. Listen, if you identify a motion that has opening joint symptoms, so we're talking about flexion and we're talking about external rotation. Remember, the lat will extend, internally rotate, and adduct. So that's a very easy way to isolate the lat. I don't think that's an awful test to pull somebody off, even though it might not be the traditional manual muscle test that has standards according to the American Academy of Orthopedic whatevers. You thought I was going to bring that one. No, it doesn't matter. But when we talk about manual muscle tests, it has to be against a standard. You can't just do it any way you want. So, and you should probably be doing all of them in the relative same positions. You're going to do some sitting and some lying down. Doesn't really make sense. You have a totally different stabilization pattern. Getting back to the lat, if you have opening joint symptoms in the opposite of where the lat is, I was describing this to a patient who was trying to understand, like, what is it that we're trying to accomplish with some of our manual therapies. Put your hand on the lat. It's only going to work for you, not someone else. And if you shouldn't be putting your hands on people, don't. You can take a more buckshot approach, because stretching, mobilizing is a good thing. It just may not do anything. I don't think you're going to hurt somebody. If you're foam rolling with spikes with a piece of wood in your mouth, then you're a goof. But foam rolling, if that's all you have. But here's what I think from a therapy standpoint. If you put your hand somewhere on the lat, and what does it feel like? Because if my arm is down by my side, my lat should not feel anything other than gooey or buttery or very, very loose. And then I bring it into one of these different places. And if at some point you think that your hand feels more tension than what should be at that range of motion. So let's say you get to like 120, 110 plus, and you feel the lat and it's starting to talk back a little bit. Well, that's probably a good position where you treat, meaning you create transverse deformation. You're going to hold there and then have them do something else around that particular motion. That might be a good idea to start to unravel whatever type of load or adaptations are through the lats. Lats absolutely, just like I'm saying, strengthen, like muscles of your neck will respond to any type of tried and true strengthening method. I'm suggesting it doesn't carry over because I think the neck and the spine work a little bit differently than other joints. From a deep stabilization strategy. That's what I'm suggesting. The lat, I don't think works any different, meaning you're going to do something, and to suggest that it doesn't need to be stretched, mobilized, treated, addressed, attacked, I'm not sure where that's coming from. So there's a lot of things that you can do for the lat, and the first and foremost would be to analyze if there is a tissue extensibility dysfunction that makes sense, that the lat would be someplace to look at. So a couple random thoughts. Maybe they were more cohesive than I thought they were, because when I read them, they seem like they're all over the place. But so stuff about the neck, or probably all of these things are probably things that this individual is attributing to whatever their neck pain or pathology is, and just gave you some ideas to think about in the neck, upper quarter, breathing, lats, all things that probably do have a little bit more connection than maybe I thought. All right, so hopefully that all makes sense. Greatest story ever told. Green, also similar color that a lot of leprechauns wear.
Audio